It was a bright, sunny morning in Palm Beach, Florida. The sky was clear, and the air smelled fresh. Birds chirped as they flew around, and the ocean waves gently crashed against the shore. At Mar-a-Lago, one of the most famous homes in America, everything seemed peaceful. Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, was sitting outside on his terrace. He had a cup of coffee in his hand and was looking at his phone. His eyes moved quickly as he scrolled through the news headlines. For Donald Trump, mornings like this were normal. He liked to start his day by reading about what was happening in the world. Sometimes, he would tweet his thoughts about the news. Other times, he would just sit quietly and think. But today was not going to be an ordinary day. Something unusual was about to happen, something that no one expected. A young man named Alex Carter was coming to visit. Alex was a Navy captain. He was only 29 years old, which is very young for someone in such an important job. Alex had just finished a long tour of duty overseas. That means he had been working hard in another country, far away from home, to help keep people safe. Now, he was back in the United States, taking a short break before his next assignment. Alex didn't know much about Mar-a-Lago. He had heard about it, of course, because it was famous. It was where Donald Trump lived when he wasn't in Washington, D.C., or New York City. But Alex had never been there before. When he arrived, he felt a little nervous. After all, he was about to meet one of the most well-known people in the world. Donald Trump was bold, confident, and always spoke his mind. Alex knew that talking to him would be interesting but also challenging. The meeting between Donald Trump and Alex Carter was not planned by either of them. Instead, some mutual friends had arranged it. These friends thought it would be fun to bring two very different people together. On one side, there was Donald Trump, a billionaire businessman, a former reality TV star, and a leader who had served as the President of the United States. On the other side, there was Alex Carter, a young Navy captain who worked hard every day to protect his country. Their lives were so different that it almost seemed strange to imagine them spending time together. But sometimes, the best things come from unexpected meetings. And this was going to be one of those times. When Alex stepped out of his car, he took a deep breath. He looked up at Mar-a-Lago and felt amazed. The building was huge, with white walls and tall windows. It looked like a palace. Alex walked toward the entrance, feeling both excited and a little unsure. He wondered what Donald Trump would be like in person. Would he be friendly? Serious? Funny? There was no way to know until they met. Inside, Alex was greeted by staff members who showed him to the terrace where Donald Trump was waiting. As Alex approached, he saw Trump sitting at a table. He was wearing a dark suit and tie, even though it was early in the morning. His hair was perfectly styled, and he looked sharp and confident. Alex straightened his own uniform, making sure it looked neat and tidy. Then, he stepped forward and held out his hand. "Good morning, Mr. Trump," Alex said politely. "Thank you for inviting me." Trump stood up and shook Alex's hand firmly. "Good morning, Captain Carter. Nice to meet you. Have a seat." As they sat down, neither of them realized how important this meeting would become. They didn't know that their conversation would change the way they thought about each other and that it would also spark discussions all over America. Before we go any further, let me ask you something. Do you think someone like Alex could hold their own against someone as bold and outspoken as Donald Trump? Think about it for a moment. Alex is younger, quieter, and comes from a completely different background. Trump is loud, confident, and used to being in charge. Do you think Alex will be able to stand up to him? Or do you think Trump will dominate the conversation? Leave a comment below and share your thoughts. Now, let's talk more about Alex. He was a Navy captain, which is a big responsibility. In the Navy, captains are leaders. They make decisions that affect their teams and missions. Alex had earned his rank through hard work and dedication. He had studied hard in school, passed tough tests, and trained for many years to get where he was. But despite his accomplishments, Alex didn't act like he was better than anyone else. He was humble, meaning he didn't brag about his achievements. Instead, he focused on doing his job well and helping others. To most people, Alex looked like just another soldier. He wore his uniform with pride, but he didn't try to draw attention to himself. He was quiet and disciplined, following rules and staying focused on his goals. Some might even say he was predictable, meaning they thought they could guess what he would do or say. But there was something special about Alex that made people pause when they met him. It was hard to explain, but it was there. Maybe it was the way he listened carefully when others spoke. Or maybe it was the calm confidence he showed, even in difficult situations. Whatever it was, Alex had a quality that made people respect him even if they couldn't quite put their finger on why. Donald Trump, on the other hand, was the opposite of quiet and predictable. He was bold, meaning he wasn't afraid to speak his mind or take risks. He was known for saying exactly what he thought, whether people agreed with him or not. Trump was also very confident. He believed in himself and his abilities, and he expected others to believe in him too. Over the years, he had built a reputation as a strong leader who got things done. But he was also controversial, meaning that people had strong opinions about him, both good and bad. So, what would happen when these two men met? Would they get along? Would they argue? Or would they learn something new from each other? No one knew yet, not even Donald Trump or Alex Carter. All they knew was that they were about to have breakfast together, and anything could happen. As they sat down at the table, the sun warmed their faces, and the sound of birds filled the air. The staff brought out plates of food: fresh fruit, eggs, bacon, and toast. Everything looked delicious. Alex thanked the staff and waited for Trump to start eating before he began. He wanted to show respect, especially since he was a guest. Trump glanced at Alex and smiled. "So, Captain Carter," he said, "tell me about yourself. What brings you here today?" Alex took a sip of water and thought for a moment. He knew this was his chance to make a good impression. But he also knew that Trump was not someone who liked long, boring answers. So, Alex decided to keep it simple. "Well, sir," Alex replied, "I've spent the last year serving overseas. My team and I worked hard to complete our mission and keep everyone safe. Now, I'm back home for a little while before my next assignment." Trump nodded. "Overseas, huh? That must have been tough. Did you run into any problems?" Alex hesitated for a second. He didn't want to give too much detail right away, but he also didn't want to seem like he was hiding anything. "Yes, sir," he said finally. "We faced some challenges, but we handled them. I'll tell you more if you'd like." Trump leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "Okay, Captain. Impress me." And with that, the conversation began. Neither of them realized how much this meeting would change them or how it would inspire millions of people across the country. Stay tuned to find out what happens next. Mar-a-Lago was a place like no other. It was grand and beautiful, with its white walls glowing in the morning sun. The terrace where Donald Trump and Alex Carter sat overlooked the sparkling blue ocean. Palm trees swayed gently in the breeze, and the sound of waves crashing against the shore added a soothing background melody. It was the kind of place that made people feel relaxed, yet also aware of how special it was. Donald Trump had spent many mornings here, enjoying the view and thinking about his day. He liked the quiet moments before the hustle and bustle of meetings and phone calls began. But today felt different. There was a sense of anticipation in the air. Maybe it was because Alex was there, someone new and unexpected. Or maybe it was because Trump himself was curious about what this young Navy captain had to say. Alex, on the other hand, was taking everything in. He had never been to a place like Mar-a-Lago before. Everything seemed luxurious and elegant. The furniture on the terrace was fancy, with soft cushions and shiny metal frames. The table they were sitting at was set perfectly, with sparkling glasses and silverware. Even the food looked like it belonged in a magazine. Alex couldn't help but feel a little out of place. His life in the Navy was very different from this world of wealth and glamour. But Alex didn't let his nerves show. He reminded himself why he was here, to share his experiences and perhaps learn something new. He took another deep breath and focused on the conversation ahead. After all, he was used to challenging situations. Being in the Navy meant facing tough conditions every day. Whether it was dealing with bad weather, dangerous missions, or long hours away from home, Alex had learned to stay calm and focused. And now, sitting across from Donald Trump, he knew he could handle this too. Trump watched Alex closely as they ate breakfast. He noticed how carefully Alex listened when spoken to and how thoughtful his answers were. There was a quiet confidence about him that intrigued Trump. Most people who met him for the first time were either overly eager to impress or too nervous to speak clearly. But Alex seemed balanced, neither trying too hard nor holding back completely. "So," Trump said after a few minutes of small talk, "you mentioned you faced some challenges overseas. Tell me more about that." Alex put down his fork and wiped his mouth with a napkin. He knew this was an important moment. This was his chance to explain what he had been through and what he had learned. But he also wanted to be honest without giving away too much. Military operations were often sensitive topics, and Alex had to be careful about what he shared. "Yes, sir," Alex began. "Our mission was to help stabilize a region that had been affected by conflict. We worked closely with local leaders and communities to rebuild infrastructure and provide security. It wasn't easy. There were times when things got dangerous, and we had to make quick decisions to protect ourselves and others." Trump nodded slowly, his eyes narrowing slightly. He was listening intently, processing every word Alex said. "Dangerous, huh? What kind of dangers?" Alex hesitated again. He didn't want to scare anyone or make the situation sound worse than it was. But he also didn't want to downplay the risks his team had faced. "Well, sir," he continued, "we encountered hostile groups who didn't want us there. They tried to stop us from doing our job. Sometimes, they attacked us directly. Other times, they used tactics like ambushes or traps. We had to stay alert at all times." Trump raised an eyebrow. "Ambushes? That sounds intense. How did you handle it?" Alex smiled faintly. "We relied on teamwork and strategy. When you're outnumbered, brute force isn't always the answer. You have to use your brain. For example, during one ambush, we tricked the enemy into thinking reinforcements were coming. It gave us enough time to regroup and counterattack." Trump chuckled softly. "Smart move. Sounds like something I'd do in business. Fake 'em out, then close the deal." Alex nodded. "Exactly, sir. Strategy can make all the difference." Their conversation flowed naturally from there. Trump asked more questions, and Alex answered them honestly and respectfully. They talked about leadership, decision-making, and the importance of staying calm under pressure. Alex explained how he motivated his team and kept morale high, even in difficult situations. He shared stories of camaraderie and sacrifice, highlighting the bravery of the men and women he served with. Trump listened with growing interest. He had always admired strong leaders, and Alex's words resonated with him. There was a clarity and purpose in Alex's voice that Trump found refreshing. It reminded him of his own approach to leadership: bold, decisive, and unafraid to take risks. "Captain Carter," Trump said after a while, "you're not what I expected. You're younger than most captains I've met, but you carry yourself like someone with years of experience. Where does that come from? Alex thought for a moment before answering. I think it comes from believing in what you're doing, sir. When you know your mission matters, it gives you strength. And when you see your team working together toward a common goal, it inspires you to lead by example. Trump nodded approvingly. That's a good answer. Very impressive. As the morning went on, the conversation shifted to broader topics. They discussed politics, policy, and the future of America. Alex spoke passionately about the need for unity and cooperation. He believed that solving problems required everyone to work together, regardless of their differences. Trump listened thoughtfully, occasionally nodding or asking follow-up questions. Unity is important, Trump admitted. But it's not always easy to achieve. People are divided these days. How do you think we can bring them together? Donald Trump wasn't someone who held back when talking to people. He liked to ask questions, lots of them. And he didn't waste time either. Within just a few minutes of sitting down with Alex, Trump started peppering him with questions. So, Captain, Trump said, leaning back in his chair with a smirk on his face, what exactly have you done lately? His tone wasn't mean or rude, it was playful, like he was teasing Alex, but there was also a hint of skepticism in it. It was as if Trump was testing Alex, trying to see if this young Navy captain had anything interesting to say. Trump's eyes sparkled as he waited for Alex's answer. Alex smiled politely but didn't flinch. He stayed calm and collected. Sir, he began, I've spent the last year leading missions in some of the toughest parts of the world. My team saved dozens of lives. Trump raised an eyebrow. He looked intrigued but still skeptical. Impressive, he said slowly. But saving lives is expected, isn't it? What makes you stand out? The question hung in the air like smoke after a firecracker. It wasn't rude, it was classic Trump. Challenging. Pushy. Designed to test limits. And Alex? Well, Alex simply nodded. You're right, sir, he said calmly. Saving lives is our job. But sometimes, doing the unexpected can make all the difference. Trump leaned forward slightly, his curiosity growing. Doing the unexpected, he repeated. What do you mean by that? Alex took a moment to think before answering. He wanted to explain himself clearly without sounding too boastful. Well, sir, he said, when you're in tough situations, you can't always rely on the usual methods. Sometimes, you have to think outside the box. Trump tilted his head, interested now. Outside the box? Give me an example. Alex hesitated for a second. He didn't want to share too much about classified operations, but he knew he could give a general idea. Sure, sir, he said. One night, my team was ambushed near a village. We were outnumbered 10-1. Most teams would have retreated, but we stayed. Instead of fighting directly, we used strategy. We tricked the enemy into thinking reinforcements were coming. That gave us enough time to regroup and turn the tide. Trump chuckled softly. Tricked them, huh? I like that. Smart move. Reminds me of how I handle business deals. You fake 'em out, then close the deal. Alex nodded. Exactly, sir. Strategy can make all the difference. Trump seemed pleased with the answer, but he wasn't done yet. He liked to push people, to see how far they could go. Okay, Captain, he said, but anyone can come up with a clever plan. What about leadership? How do you keep your team motivated when things get tough? This was another test. Trump wanted to know if Alex was just a good strategist or if he was also a strong leader. Alex thought carefully before responding. Leadership is about trust, sir, he said. My team knows I'll never ask them to do something I wouldn't do myself. When things get tough, I stay calm and focused. That helps them stay calm too. Trump nodded slowly. Trust and calmness, huh? Makes sense. But what about failure? Have you ever failed, Captain? And how did you handle it? The question caught Alex off guard for a moment. Failure wasn't something people liked to talk about, especially not in front of someone like Donald Trump. But Alex decided to be honest. Yes, sir, he admitted. There have been times when things didn't go as planned. But failure is part of learning. The key is to take responsibility, learn from your mistakes, and move forward. Trump smiled faintly. Good answer. Very mature. As the conversation continued, Trump kept asking more questions. Each one was sharper than the last, designed to dig deeper into Alex's character. What about politics, Captain? Trump asked suddenly. Do you think the government supports the military enough? Alex paused. This was a tricky question. Politics was a sensitive topic, and he didn't want to offend anyone. But he also believed in speaking his mind. I think there's room for improvement, sir, he said carefully. The military does incredible work, but sometimes resources are stretched thin. More support, whether it's funding, equipment, or mental health services, would make a big difference. Trump nodded thoughtfully. Interesting perspective. So, if you were in charge, what would you change? Alex thought for a moment. I'd focus on improving communication between leaders and troops, sir. Soldiers need to feel heard and valued. And I'd make sure families of service members are taken care of too. They sacrifice just as much as we do. Trump leaned back in his chair, looking impressed. Not bad, Captain. Not bad at all. But even though Trump seemed satisfied, Alex could feel the tension in the air. Every question Trump asked felt like a challenge, a way to test whether Alex was truly as capable as he claimed to be. And while Alex answered confidently, he couldn't shake the feeling that Trump was still skeptical. By now, it was clear that Trump and Alex were very different people. Trump was bold, outspoken, and unafraid to push boundaries. He thrived on challenges and loved debating ideas. Alex, on the other hand, was quieter and more reserved. He preferred to listen carefully before speaking and chose his words wisely. Their personalities clashed in subtle ways, creating a mix of tension and intrigue. Trump noticed this too. He found Alex's calm demeanor fascinating. Most people who met him for the first time were either overly eager to impress or too nervous to speak clearly. But Alex was different. He was respectful but firm. He didn't shy away from Trump's questions, no matter how challenging they were. Captain Carter, Trump said after a pause, you're not what I expected. You're younger than most captains I've met, but you carry yourself like someone with years of experience. Where does that come from? Alex smiled faintly. It comes from believing in what you're doing, sir. When you know your mission matters, it gives you strength. And when you see your team working together toward a common goal, it inspires you to lead by example. Trump nodded approvingly. That's a good answer. Very impressive. Despite the compliments, there were hints of conflict beneath the surface. Trump's playful tone sometimes bordered on mocking, and Alex had to tread carefully to avoid being drawn into arguments. For example, when Trump joked about how young Alex was, Alex responded with humor instead of defensiveness. Age is just a number, sir, he said with a smile. It's the results that count. Trump laughed. Fair point, Captain. Fair point. But not every exchange was so light-hearted. At one point, Trump brought up the topic of public perception. People don't always understand what the military does, he said. How do you deal with criticism? Alex's expression turned serious. Criticism is part of the job, sir. What matters is staying true to your values and doing what's right, even when others don't agree. Trump studied Alex closely. That's easier said than done, Captain. Do you ever doubt yourself? Alex hesitated before answering. Sometimes, yes. But doubt can be a good thing if it pushes you to improve. The important thing is to keep moving forward. Trump nodded slowly. Wise words, Captain. Very wise. As the breakfast went on, the suspense grew thicker. Trump's questions became more pointed, and Alex's answers became more thoughtful. Both men were aware that this meeting was about more than just small talk. It was a chance to learn from each other and perhaps even challenge each other's views. For Alex, the tension came from knowing that Trump was watching him closely, analyzing every word he said. For Trump, the tension came from realizing that Alex was smarter and more capable than he initially assumed. Their differences made the conversation exciting, but also unpredictable. Before we move on, I'll say to you now, do you think Alex is handling Trump's questions well? Or do you think Trump is still testing him? Let me know in the comments. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the terrace grew warmer. The sound of waves crashing against the shore continued in the background, providing a soothing contrast to the intense conversation happening at the table. Neither Trump nor Alex realized it yet, but this meeting would mark a turning point not just for them, but for millions of people across America. Little did they know, their discussion would spark debates about leadership, unity, and the importance of listening to diverse perspectives. And as the day unfolded, both men would discover things about themselves and each other that they hadn't expected. As the conversation deepened, Trump leaned further into his chair, his sharp eyes never leaving Alex. He seemed both intrigued and skeptical, as though he was trying to figure out whether Alex was truly as impressive as he appeared or if he was just another young officer with good manners and rehearsed answers. Captain Carter, Trump said, tapping his fingers lightly on the table, you talk a lot about teamwork and strategy. But tell me this, have you ever faced a situation where your team doubted you? Where they didn't believe in your plan? Alex paused for a moment. This was a tough question, one that dug into the heart of leadership. He knew that every leader, no matter how confident, had moments of doubt from their team. It came with the territory. But admitting it might make him seem vulnerable, something Trump might see as a weakness. Yes, sir, Alex admitted finally, his voice steady. There have been times when my team questioned my decisions. It happens to everyone, especially when stakes are high. But I've learned that the key is transparency. If you explain your reasoning clearly and show confidence in your plan, most people will follow you. Trump raised an eyebrow. Most people? What about the rest? Alex smiled faintly. The rest need proof. Sometimes, you have to take action first to earn their trust. Leading by example works better than words alone. Trump nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. Interesting. So, you're saying actions speak louder than words? Exactly, sir, Alex replied. In the Navy, we don't have time for empty promises. You prove yourself through what you do. Trump chuckled softly. I like that. Very practical. Reminds me of how I run my businesses. Talk is cheap, you've got to deliver results. The tension between them softened slightly, but it was still there. Trump's questions were relentless, each one probing deeper into Alex's character and experience. For Alex, every answer felt like walking a tightrope. He had to strike the right balance, confident but not arrogant, humble but not weak. And Trump, for his part, seemed determined to keep pushing until he found a crack in Alex's armor. After a few minutes of silence, Trump shifted gears. Let's talk about values, Captain, he said, leaning forward again. What do you think is the most important quality in a leader? Alex didn't hesitate. Integrity, sir. Without integrity, nothing else matters. People need to trust that you'll do the right thing, even when it's hard. Trump tilted his head, studying Alex closely. Integrity, huh? That's a bold choice. Most people say things like vision or decisiveness. Why integrity? Because vision and decisiveness mean nothing if people don't trust you, sir, Alex explained. If your team doesn't believe in your character, they won't follow you, not fully. Integrity builds that foundation. Trump nodded approvingly. Good point. Very true. Then, almost casually, he added, but let's be honest, Captain. In politics and business, integrity isn't always the top priority. Sometimes, winning is more important. What do you think about that? This was another test, a big one. Trump was asking Alex to weigh in on a controversial topic, whether success justified cutting corners. Alex took a deep breath before answering. He knew this was a delicate subject, especially with someone like Trump, who had built his career on bold moves and unapologetic ambition. I understand the pressure to win, sir, Alex said carefully. But I believe you can achieve success without compromising your values. Winning at any cost often leads to bigger problems down the road. Trust takes years to build but only seconds to break. Trump smirked. That's a very idealistic view, Captain. Do you really think it's possible to win without bending the rules sometimes? Alex held Trump's gaze. I think it's possible, sir. It's harder, yes. But in the long run, doing the right thing earns lasting respect. And that's worth more than short-term victories. Trump stared at him for a moment, then burst out laughing. You know, Captain, you're full of surprises. Most people would have agreed with me. But you're sticking to your guns. I respect that. Despite the laughter, the clash of perspectives was clear. Trump valued boldness and results above all else, while Alex emphasized integrity and long-term impact. Their differing views created an undercurrent of tension, even as they continued to engage respectfully. Trump decided to push further. Let's say you're leading a mission, Captain, and following the rules means losing. What do you do then? Stick to your principles, or adapt to survive? Alex thought for a moment. It depends on the situation, sir. Rules exist for a reason, to protect people and maintain order. But there are rare cases where adapting is necessary. The key is knowing the difference and making sure your decision aligns with your core values. Trump grinned. So, you're saying you'd bend the rules if it meant saving lives? If it meant saving lives and staying true to my values, yes, sir, Alex replied firmly. But I'd take full responsibility for my actions. Accountability is part of leadership. Trump leaned back in his chair, looking impressed. Not many people have the guts to say that, Captain. You're proving to be quite the leader. As the morning wore on, Alex began to feel the weight of Trump's expectations. Every question felt like a challenge, every compliment laced with scrutiny. Trump wasn't just testing Alex's knowledge or experience, he was testing his resolve, his ability to stand firm under pressure. And Alex, though calm on the surface, was acutely aware of this. At one point, Trump asked, Captain, do you think you'd make a good politician? The question caught Alex off guard. Politics was a world he had never considered entering. His focus had always been on serving his country in uniform, not in government. But Trump's tone suggested he was serious. I'm not sure, sir, Alex admitted. Politics is complicated. I prefer direct action, working on the ground, solving problems face to face. But I do believe in public service. Whether it's in the military or elsewhere, helping people is what matters most. Trump nodded thoughtfully. Public service, huh? Interesting. You know, Captain, we need more leaders like you in Washington. People who care about results, not just headlines. Alex smiled politely. Thank you, sir. That's high praise coming from you. Trump waved a hand dismissively. Don't thank me yet. I'm still deciding whether you're as good as you seem. The comment hung in the air, light but loaded. Alex knew Trump was teasing, but there was truth behind the words. This meeting wasn't just a casual breakfast, it was a trial, a chance for Alex to prove himself to one of the most influential men in America. By now, the terrace was bathed in golden sunlight. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt water, mingling with the aroma of coffee and fresh fruit. Despite the serene setting, the atmosphere between Trump and Alex remained charged with energy. Neither man realized it yet, but their conversation was laying the groundwork for something much bigger. Trump's skepticism was fading, replaced by genuine curiosity. He found himself drawn to Alex's quiet confidence and unwavering principles. Meanwhile, Alex was beginning to see Trump in a new light, not just as a controversial figure, but as a man who thrived on challenges and valued strength. Before we wrap up this section, I'll say to you now, do you think Trump is starting to respect Alex? Or is he still testing him? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. As the conversation turned to broader topics, Trump asked, "Captain, what do you think makes a nation strong? Is it its military? Its economy? Something else?" Alex considered the question carefully. "All of those things matter, sir, but I think the real strength of a nation comes from its unity. When people work together toward common goals, amazing things happen. Division weakens us, but unity empowers us." Trump nodded slowly. "Unity, huh? Easier said than done. How do you unite people who disagree on everything?" "By focusing on shared values, sir," Alex replied. "Even the most divided groups can find common ground if they look for it. Respect, fairness, and a desire for progress, those are universal." Trump looked at Alex with newfound admiration. "You're a thinker, Captain. Not many people your age have such clarity." Alex smiled modestly. "Thank you, sir. I've been fortunate to learn from great mentors." Trump chuckled. "Well, maybe someday you'll mentor others. You've got a lot to offer." As the breakfast drew to a close, Trump stood up and extended his hand. "Captain Carter, it's been a pleasure. You've given me a lot to think about." Alex shook his hand firmly. "Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity." Neither man knew it yet, but this meeting would ripple outward, sparking discussions across the country. Their conversation had planted seeds of change, seeds that would grow into something extraordinary. After Alex left Mar-a-Lago, he couldn't stop thinking about the conversation. It had been intense, challenging, and unexpectedly rewarding. Trump's questions had forced him to reflect on his own beliefs and experiences, and Alex felt a renewed sense of purpose. He realized that leadership wasn't just about commanding troops, it was about inspiring others, regardless of the context. Meanwhile, Trump was equally reflective. As he walked back inside, he replayed the conversation in his mind. Alex's calm demeanor, strategic thinking, and commitment to integrity had left a lasting impression. Trump admired people who stood by their principles, even when it was difficult. And Alex, despite his youth, had proven to be a formidable presence. Over the next few days, Trump mentioned Alex in interviews and social media posts. "I met a remarkable young Navy captain recently," he said during a rally. "His name is Alex Carter, and he reminded me of why we fight for our country. He's a true patriot." The comments sparked widespread interest. People wanted to know more about Alex and his story. Journalists reached out to interview him, and veterans praised him as a symbol of hope and resilience. Suddenly, Alex found himself in the spotlight, a position he hadn't anticipated but embraced with humility. The ripple effects of the meeting spread far beyond Trump and Alex. Across America, people began discussing the themes of their conversation: leadership, integrity, unity, and the importance of listening to diverse perspectives. Schools used their dialogue as a case study in civics classes, and community leaders referenced it in speeches. Even politicians cited Alex's words as inspiration for bridging divides. For Alex, the attention was overwhelming but motivating. He saw it as an opportunity to advocate for causes he cared about, such as supporting veterans and promoting unity. He gave interviews, spoke at events, and wrote articles sharing his insights. Through it all, he remained grounded, reminding himself that his primary mission was to serve. Trump, too, was affected by the meeting. He began incorporating some of Alex's ideas into his own rhetoric, emphasizing the importance of teamwork and accountability. Critics noted the shift, speculating that Alex had influenced Trump's perspective. Whether or not that was true, the impact was undeniable. Looking back, neither Trump nor Alex could have predicted how transformative their breakfast would be. What started as a simple meeting became a catalyst for change, inspiring millions of people to rethink their assumptions about leadership and unity. Before we move on to the next chapter, I'll say to you now, take a moment to reflect. Have you ever had a conversation that changed the way you see the world? Share your story in the comments, I'd love to hear it. Stay tuned for the next section, where we'll explore the rising action and small revelations that lead to the climax of our story. The breakfast at Mar-a-Lago continued, with pancakes, orange juice, and the sound of waves in the background. Alex started sharing stories from his time in the field. At first, Trump listened half-heartedly, nodding along as if he was just being polite. He seemed like he wasn't too interested, maybe because he had heard similar stories before. But then Alex said something that caught Trump's attention. One night, Alex began, we were ambushed near a village. We were outnumbered 10-1. Most teams would have retreated, but my crew stayed. We didn't just survive, we turned the tide. Trump's eyes narrowed. He leaned forward slightly, intrigued. How? He asked. Alex paused for a moment, choosing his words carefully. He wanted to explain clearly without giving away too much about classified operations. We used creativity instead of brute force, he said finally. We tricked them into thinking reinforcements were coming. Sometimes, strategy beats strength. Trump chuckled softly. Smart move. Reminds me of business deals. You fake 'em out, then close the deal. But Alex wasn't done yet. As the meal went on, he shared more details about his leadership style. Each story revealed a little bit more about who he was and how he led his team. These small revelations slowly chipped away at Trump's initial skepticism. Let's take a closer look at what happened next. After Trump asked how Alex's team turned the tide during the ambush, Alex decided to share more about that night. He spoke calmly, painting a picture of the situation so Trump could understand it better. It was dark, Alex said. We were patrolling near a village when suddenly, gunfire erupted. The enemy was everywhere, on rooftops, behind walls, hiding in shadows. They had us surrounded. Most teams would have pulled back, called for help, or tried to fight their way out. But we knew retreating wasn't an option. If we left, the villagers would be in danger. Trump nodded, listening closely. So what did you do? We stayed calm, Alex replied. Panic is your worst enemy in situations like that. I gathered my team and told them we needed to think differently. Instead of fighting head-on, we decided to use deception. Trump raised an eyebrow. Deception? Go on. We set up decoys, Alex explained. We used flares and loud noises to make it seem like reinforcements were arriving. The enemy thought they were outnumbered now, so they started pulling back. That gave us enough time to regroup and launch a counterattack. Trump smiled faintly. Clever. Very clever. So you outsmarted them? Yes, sir, Alex said. Strategy can make all the difference. Brute force isn't always the answer. Trump leaned back in his chair, looking thoughtful. You know, Captain, that reminds me of some of my biggest business wins. People think success comes from power or money, but sometimes it's about being smarter than the competition. Alex nodded. Exactly, sir. Whether it's in battle or business, thinking ahead gives you an edge. As the conversation moved forward, Trump asked another question. Okay, Captain, he said, you mentioned teamwork earlier. How do you inspire loyalty? What makes your team follow you without question? Alex thought for a moment before answering. This was an important part of leadership, and he wanted to explain it well. It's about trust, sir, he said. My team knows I'll never ask them to do something I wouldn't do myself. When things get tough, I stay calm and focused. That helps them stay calm too. Trump tilted his head. Interesting. So leading by example works better than giving orders. Absolutely, sir, Alex replied. Orders are necessary, but actions speak louder than words. If your team sees you working hard alongside them, they'll respect you more. And respect leads to loyalty. Trump nodded approvingly. Makes sense. People follow leaders they believe in. Alex smiled. Yes, sir. It's not about titles or rank, it's about earning their trust every single day. A few minutes later, Trump brought up a tougher topic. What about failure, Captain? He asked. Have you ever failed? And how did you handle it? This was a tricky question. No one likes to admit failure, especially not in front of someone like Donald Trump. But Alex decided to be honest. He knew that failure was part of life, and owning up to it showed strength, not weakness. Yes, sir, Alex admitted. There have been times when things didn't go as planned. Missions don't always succeed, and mistakes happen. But failure is part of learning. The key is to take responsibility, learn from your mistakes, and move forward. Trump studied Alex closely. That's easier said than done, Captain. Do you ever doubt yourself? Alex hesitated before answering. Sometimes, yes. But doubt can be a good thing if it pushes you to improve. The important thing is to keep moving forward. Trump nodded slowly. Wise words, Captain. Very wise. As the meal continued, Alex shared another aspect of his leadership style, putting his team first. He explained how he made sure everyone felt valued and supported. In the Navy, we're a family, sir, Alex said. Every member of the team matters. If someone is struggling, whether it's physically or mentally, we step in to help. No one gets left behind. Trump looked impressed. That's admirable, Captain. Not everyone thinks about their team like that. It's essential, sir, Alex replied. When people feel cared for, they perform better. They're willing to go the extra mile because they know you've got their back. Trump nodded thoughtfully. I see. So taking care of your team pays off in the long run. Exactly, sir, Alex said. Leadership isn't just about achieving goals, it's about building relationships and making sure everyone succeeds together. With each story and revelation, Trump's skepticism began to fade. At first, he had doubted whether Alex was truly as capable as he claimed to be. But now, he was starting to see the young captain in a new light. Alex's answers were thoughtful, his experiences impressive, and his principles unwavering. Captain Carter, Trump said after a pause, you're not what I expected. You're younger than most captains I've met, but you carry yourself like someone with years of experience. Where does that come from? Alex smiled faintly. It comes from believing in what you're doing, sir. When you know your mission matters, it gives you strength. And when you see your team working together toward a common goal, it inspires you to lead by example. Trump nodded approvingly. That's a good answer. Very impressive. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the terrace grew warmer. The sound of waves crashing against the shore continued in the background, providing a soothing contrast to the intense conversation happening at the table. Neither Trump nor Alex realized it yet, but this meeting would mark a turning point not just for them, but for millions of people across America. Little did they know, their discussion would spark debates about leadership, unity, and the importance of listening to diverse perspectives. And as the day unfolded, both men would discover things about themselves and each other that they hadn't expected. Stay tuned to find out what happens next. Encouraged by Trump's growing interest, Alex decided to share another story from his time overseas. This one was about a rescue mission that tested his team's limits. "One of our toughest missions involved rescuing hostages," Alex began. "They were being held in a remote area, guarded heavily. The challenge was getting in and out without causing harm to the hostages or civilians nearby." Trump leaned forward, clearly intrigued. "How did you pull it off?" "We spent days planning," Alex explained. "We studied the terrain, mapped out escape routes, and rehearsed every possible scenario. Timing was critical. We had to strike at exactly the right moment." Trump nodded. "Sounds risky." "It was," Alex admitted. "But we trusted each other. Everyone knew their role, and we executed the plan perfectly. In the end, we saved all the hostages without any casualties." Trump smiled. "That's incredible, Captain." "Incredible." Trump then shifted the conversation to communication. "In situations like that, how do you ensure everyone is on the same page?" he asked. "Clear communication is vital, sir," Alex replied. "Before every mission, we hold briefings where everyone shares ideas and asks questions. During the mission, we use radios to stay connected. If something changes, we adapt quickly." Trump nodded. "Good. Communication can make or break a team." "Yes, sir," Alex agreed. "Without it, even the best plans fall apart." As the meal drew to a close, Trump asked one final question. "Captain, how do you build trust over time? Is it just about actions, or is there more to it?" Alex thought for a moment. "It's about consistency, sir. Showing up every day, doing your best, and treating people with respect. Over time, those small actions add up." Trump smiled faintly. "Consistency. I like that." As the conversation continued, Trump seemed genuinely interested in how Alex managed to lead such a diverse group of people under extreme conditions. "Captain," Trump said, leaning forward slightly, "you keep talking about teamwork. But how do you handle disagreements within your team? What happens when someone doesn't agree with your plan?" Alex thought for a moment before answering. This was an important question because disagreements were inevitable, especially in high-pressure situations. "Sir," he began, "disagreements are natural. In fact, they're healthy if handled properly. When someone disagrees with me, I listen carefully to their point of view. Sometimes, they have insights I hadn't considered." Trump raised an eyebrow. "So you're saying you change your plans based on others' opinions?" "Not always, sir," Alex replied. "But I make sure everyone feels heard. If someone has a valid concern, we discuss it openly. The goal is to find the best solution, not to prove who's right or wrong." Trump nodded slowly. "Interesting approach. So, you value collaboration over authority?" "Yes, sir," Alex said firmly. "Authority is important, but collaboration builds trust. When people feel like their voices matter, they're more committed to the mission." Trump smiled faintly. "Makes sense. People work harder when they believe in what they're doing." To illustrate his point, Alex shared another story from his time in the field. This one was about sacrifice, a theme that resonated deeply with Trump. "One of my teammates once saved my life," Alex began. "We were clearing a building when an explosive device was triggered. He pushed me out of the way just in time. Unfortunately, he was injured in the process." Trump's expression softened. "That must have been tough." "It was, sir," Alex admitted. He spent months recovering, and I visited him whenever I could. But what struck me most was how selfless he was. He didn't hesitate to put himself in harm's way for me and for the team. Trump nodded thoughtfully. That's true bravery. Not many people would do that. Alex agreed. Exactly, sir. Sacrifice is at the heart of teamwork. Everyone looks out for each other, knowing that success depends on all of us. Trump leaned back in his chair, looking reflective. You know, Captain, that reminds me of something. In business, loyalty is rare these days. People look out for themselves first. But what you're describing, the sense of unity, it's powerful. Alex smiled. Yes, sir. It's what makes teams unstoppable. Trump then shifted the focus to handling pressure. Captain, he said, you've been in some intense situations. How do you stay calm when everything around you is falling apart? Alex took a deep breath before answering. This was a topic he had thought about often. It's all about preparation, sir. Before any mission, we train extensively so that every scenario feels familiar. That way, when things go wrong, we don't panic, we adapt. Trump nodded approvingly. Preparation. Smart. But it's also about mindset, Alex added. I remind myself that fear is natural, but it can't control me. Staying focused on the mission helps me push through the chaos. Trump chuckled softly. Sounds like advice I'd give in business. Stay focused, stay sharp. Alex grinned. Exactly, sir. Whether it's battle or business, the principles are the same. As the conversation moved forward, Trump asked a more personal question. Captain, you seem very humble for someone in your position. Don't you ever feel the need to boast about your achievements? Alex hesitated for a moment. Humility was something he valued deeply, but explaining it wasn't always easy. Sir, he said finally, I believe humility keeps me grounded. My achievements aren't mine alone, they belong to my team. Without them, I wouldn't be here. Trump nodded thoughtfully. That's a refreshing perspective. Most people love to take credit. I understand why people want recognition, sir, Alex replied. But in the Navy, we focus on the mission, not individual glory. That's what drives us. Trump smiled faintly. You're a rare breed, Captain. Very rare. Each story Alex shared revealed another layer of his character. His calm demeanor, strategic thinking, and commitment to his team painted a picture of a leader who led not just with authority but with heart. Trump found himself increasingly impressed by Alex's maturity and wisdom, qualities that seemed far beyond his years. At one point, Trump joked, Captain, you're making me look bad. You're supposed to be nervous around me, not teaching me lessons. Alex laughed politely. I'm learning a lot from you too, sir. Leadership is a two-way street. Trump chuckled. Fair enough, Captain. Fair enough. As the morning wore on, the terrace grew warmer. The sound of waves crashing against the shore continued in the background, providing a soothing contrast to the intense conversation happening at the table. Neither Trump nor Alex realized it yet, but their meeting was laying the groundwork for something much bigger. Trump's skepticism had faded almost entirely, replaced by genuine admiration. He saw in Alex a kindred spirit, someone who understood the importance of boldness, strategy, and integrity. Meanwhile, Alex was beginning to see Trump in a new light, not just as a controversial figure, but as a man who thrived on challenges and valued strength. Before we move on, I'll say to you now, do you think Trump is starting to respect Alex? Or is he still testing him? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. As the meal drew to a close, Trump brought up a broader topic. Captain, let's talk about America. What do you think makes our country strong? Alex considered the question carefully. Our diversity, sir. We come from different backgrounds, but we share common values: freedom, opportunity, and resilience. When we work together, there's nothing we can't achieve. Trump nodded slowly. Unity, huh? Easier said than done. How do you unite people who disagree on everything? By focusing on shared goals, sir, Alex replied. Even the most divided groups can find common ground if they look for it. Respect, fairness, and a desire for progress, those are universal. Trump looked at Alex with newfound admiration. You're a thinker, Captain. Not many people your age have such clarity. Alex smiled modestly. Thank you, sir. I've been fortunate to learn from great mentors. Trump chuckled. Well, maybe someday you'll mentor others. You've got a lot to offer. As the breakfast came to an end, Trump stood up and extended his hand. Captain Carter, it's been a pleasure. You've given me a lot to think about. Alex shook his hand firmly. Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity. Neither man knew it yet, but this meeting would ripple outward, sparking discussions across the country. Their conversation had planted seeds of change, seeds that would grow into something extraordinary. After Alex left Mar-a-Lago, he couldn't stop thinking about the conversation. It had been intense, challenging, and unexpectedly rewarding. Trump's questions had forced him to reflect on his own beliefs and experiences, and Alex felt a renewed sense of purpose. He realized that leadership wasn't just about commanding troops, it was about inspiring others, regardless of the context. Meanwhile, Trump was equally reflective. As he walked back inside, he replayed the conversation in his mind. Alex's calm demeanor, strategic thinking, and commitment to integrity had left a lasting impression. Trump admired people who stood by their principles, even when it was difficult. And Alex, despite his youth, had proven to be a formidable presence. Over the next few days, Trump mentioned Alex in interviews and social media posts. I met a remarkable young Navy captain recently, he said during a rally. His name is Alex Carter, and he reminded me of why we fight for our country. He's a true patriot. The comments sparked widespread interest. People wanted to know more about Alex and his story. Journalists reached out to interview him, and veterans praised him as a symbol of hope and resilience. Suddenly, Alex found himself in the spotlight, a position he hadn't anticipated but embraced with humility. The ripple effects of the meeting spread far beyond Trump and Alex. Across America, people began discussing the themes of their conversation: leadership, integrity, unity, and the importance of listening to diverse perspectives. Schools used their dialogue as a case study in civics classes, and community leaders referenced it in speeches. Even politicians cited Alex's words as inspiration for bridging divides. For Alex, the attention was overwhelming but motivating. He saw it as an opportunity to advocate for causes he cared about, such as supporting veterans and promoting unity. He gave interviews, spoke at events, and wrote articles sharing his insights. Through it all, he remained grounded, reminding himself that his primary mission was to serve. Trump, too, was affected by the meeting. He began incorporating some of Alex's ideas into his own rhetoric, emphasizing the importance of teamwork and accountability. Critics noted the shift, speculating that Alex had influenced Trump's perspective. Whether or not that was true, the impact was undeniable. Looking back, neither Trump nor Alex could have predicted how transformative their breakfast would be. What started as a simple meeting became a catalyst for change, inspiring millions of people to rethink their assumptions about leadership and unity. Before we move on to the next chapter, I'll say to you now, take a moment to reflect. Have you ever had a conversation that changed the way you see the world? Share your story in the comments, I'd love to hear it. By the time dessert arrived, the conversation between Donald Trump and Alex Carter had already covered a lot of ground. They talked about leadership, teamwork, strategy, and even failure. But just when it seemed like the discussion was winding down, Something unexpected happened. Trump leaned forward in his chair, his eyes narrowing slightly as he asked a question that caught Alex off guard. "If you were president for a day," Trump said, "what's the first thing you'd do?" The question hung in the air like smoke after fireworks. It wasn't playful or teasing this time, it felt serious, almost personal. Alex hesitated for a moment. He could sense that this was a pivotal moment, one that might change how Trump saw him forever. He took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully before answering. "I'd focus on unity," Alex said clearly and confidently. "Too many leaders divide us. If we work together not as Republicans or Democrats, but as Americans, we could solve anything." Trump stared at him, stunned. For once, he didn't interrupt. His usual quick responses and sharp remarks were gone. Instead, he listened quietly, letting Alex continue. "And honestly, sir," Alex added, "I believe you have the power to lead that charge. People listen to you. They trust you. Imagine what you could accomplish if you chose to unite instead of divide." The room fell silent. Even the sound of the ocean waves seemed to fade into the background. Trump's expression softened, and for the first time, he saw Alex not as a young officer but as a peer, a leader with wisdom beyond his years. Trump sat back in his chair, his eyes fixed on Alex. The young Navy captain's words echoed in his mind. Unity. It was a simple idea, yet it carried so much weight. Trump had spent years building his reputation as a bold, decisive leader. He thrived on challenges and wasn't afraid to stir things up. But Alex's message was different. It wasn't about winning arguments or proving points, it was about bringing people together. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. Trump looked out at the ocean, lost in thought. Then he turned back to Alex. "You really believe I can do that?" he asked, his voice softer than before. "Yes, sir," Alex replied without hesitation. "I've seen how people respond to you. You have a unique ability to inspire action. If you used that influence to bring people together instead of driving them apart, it could change everything." Trump nodded slowly, still processing what Alex had said. "That's interesting," he murmured. "Most people tell me to double down on my style. They say being bold is what makes me effective." Alex smiled faintly. "Being bold isn't bad, sir. But boldness combined with unity? That's unstoppable." As the silence stretched on, Alex realized that this was more than just a casual conversation. This was a turning point for both of them. Trump wasn't just hearing Alex's words, he was considering them. And Alex wasn't just sharing his thoughts, he was planting seeds of change. "Captain Carter," Trump said finally, breaking the quiet, "you're full of surprises. Most people wouldn't dare say something like that to me." "I'm not trying to challenge you, sir," Alex explained. "I'm just speaking from experience. In the Navy, we succeed because we work as one team, no matter where we come from or what we believe. Politics doesn't matter out there, only the mission does." Trump chuckled softly. "Politics doesn't matter, huh? That's easier said than done." "It's hard, yes," Alex admitted. "But imagine the impact if we tried. Imagine what America could achieve if everyone focused on common goals instead of differences." Trump leaned forward again, his curiosity reignited. "What kind of goals are you talking about?" "Big ones, sir," Alex replied. "Things like improving education, supporting veterans, protecting the environment. These are issues that affect everyone, regardless of party lines. If leaders focused on solving these problems, people would follow." Trump nodded thoughtfully. "You make it sound so simple." "It is simple, sir," Alex said. "But simple doesn't mean easy. It takes courage to step outside your comfort zone and try something new." As the conversation continued, Trump found himself seeing Alex in a completely new light. At first, He had viewed the young captain as someone inexperienced, perhaps naive. But now, he saw a man who understood the complexities of leadership and had the courage to speak truthfully even to someone as powerful as himself. "You know, Captain," Trump said after a pause, "you remind me of myself when I was younger. Not afraid to take risks, not afraid to speak your mind." Alex smiled modestly. "Thank you, sir. That means a lot coming from you." Trump waved a hand dismissively. "Don't thank me yet. I'm still deciding whether you're as good as you seem." Despite the joke, there was warmth in Trump's tone. He was impressed by Alex's clarity and conviction. For the first time, he began to wonder if this young Navy captain might have insights worth listening to. Neither Trump nor Alex realized it yet, but their conversation was about to spark something much bigger. What started as a simple breakfast meeting was becoming a catalyst for change, not just for them, but for millions of people across America. Trump couldn't stop thinking about Alex's words. Later that evening, he mentioned the meeting during an interview. "I met a remarkable young Navy captain today," he said. "His name is Alex Carter, and he reminded me of why we fight for our country. He talked about unity, not division, and it made me think." The comment went viral almost instantly. People wanted to know more about Alex and his story. Journalists reached out to interview him, and veterans praised him as a symbol of hope and resilience. Suddenly, Alex found himself in the spotlight, a position he hadn't anticipated but embraced with humility. In the days that followed, Trump continued to reflect on his conversation with Alex. He began incorporating some of Alex's ideas into his own speeches and social media posts. "Unity is strength," he tweeted. "Let's focus on what brings us together, not what divides us." Critics noticed the shift, speculating that Alex had influenced Trump's perspective. Whether or not that was true, the impact was undeniable. Across America, people started discussing the themes of their conversation: leadership, integrity, and the importance of working together. For Alex, the attention was overwhelming but motivating. He saw it as an opportunity to advocate for causes he cared about, such as supporting veterans and promoting unity. He gave interviews, spoke at events, and wrote articles sharing his insights. Through it all, he remained grounded, reminding himself that his primary mission was to serve. As the dust settled, both Trump and Alex reflected on the meeting. For Trump, it was a reminder that wisdom could come from unexpected places. For Alex, it was proof that even the smallest voices could spark big changes. Before we move on to the resolution, I'll say to you now, do you think Trump will act on Alex's advice? Or will he go back to his old ways? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. After the initial shock of Alex's bold statement wore off, Trump pressed further. "Captain," he said, "you talk about unity, but how do you actually achieve it? People are divided over so many things: politics, religion, culture. How do you bridge those gaps?" Alex thought for a moment before responding. "It starts with listening, sir. Too often, we focus on what divides us instead of what connects us. When people feel heard, they're more willing to work together." Trump tilted his head. "Listening. That's not something I hear often." "It's powerful, sir," Alex replied. "When you truly listen, you understand others' perspectives. And when you show respect for their views, they're more likely to respect yours." Trump nodded slowly. "Makes sense. So, you're saying communication is key?" "Yes, sir," Alex said firmly. "Clear, honest communication builds trust. Without trust, unity is impossible." Trump then asked another question. "What about accountability, Captain? How do you hold people accountable while still promoting unity?" "It's a balance, sir," Alex explained. "Accountability doesn't mean punishment, it means setting clear expectations and following through. When people see fairness, they're more likely to cooperate. Trump smiled faintly. Fairness. Another word I don't hear enough. Alex grinned. It's essential, sir. Fairness creates loyalty. And loyalty strengthens teams. As the conversation deepened, Trump began to feel a mix of emotions. On one hand, he was proud of Alex's maturity and insight. On the other hand, he felt challenged, pushed to reconsider some of his own beliefs. It was uncomfortable, but also invigorating. You know, Captain, Trump said, you're making me rethink some things. Maybe unity isn't as far-fetched as I thought. Alex smiled warmly. It's never too late to try, sir. Every step toward unity counts. By the end of their meeting, Trump stood up and extended his hand. Captain Carter, it's been an honor. You've given me a lot to think about. Alex shook his hand firmly. Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity. Neither man knew it yet, but their meeting would ripple outward, sparking discussions across the country. Their conversation had planted seeds of change, seeds that would grow into something extraordinary. After their meeting at Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump couldn't stop talking about Alex Carter. The young Navy captain had left a deep impression on him. Trump was so inspired by their conversation that he started sharing it with everyone he could. He called reporters to tell them about Alex. He posted about him on social media. He even mentioned Alex during one of his rallies. This kid gets it, Trump declared to the crowd. He reminded me why I got into politics, to fix problems, not create them. Trump's words spread quickly. People were curious. Who was this young Navy captain? What did he say to make such an impact on someone like Donald Trump? The more Trump talked about Alex, the more people wanted to know his story. Meanwhile, Alex had no idea how much of an impact he'd made. After leaving Mar-a-Lago, he went back to his normal duties. He returned to his work with the Navy, doing what he always did, serving his country quietly and humbly. He didn't think too much about his breakfast with Trump. To him, it had just been a nice conversation, nothing more. But then, something unexpected happened. News broke about Trump's praise for Alex. Reporters began writing articles about the young Navy captain. Veterans who had served alongside Alex shared stories about his leadership and bravery. Civilians who heard about him felt inspired by his message of unity and teamwork. Suddenly, Alex wasn't just a quiet Navy captain anymore. He became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even the smallest voices can spark big change. People started seeing him as proof that anyone, no matter how young or unknown, can make a difference if they speak up with courage and honesty. When Alex first heard that Trump was talking about him, he was surprised. He didn't expect his words to have such a big effect. But as the news spread, Alex realized that his message of unity had touched people in ways he hadn't imagined. It's amazing, Alex said in an interview, how one conversation can ripple outward and touch millions. I didn't set out to change anything, I just wanted to share my thoughts honestly. But now, I see how important it is to keep speaking up. People loved hearing Alex's story. They saw him as someone who stood for fairness, teamwork, and respect. His calm demeanor and clear thinking made him relatable. Even though he was younger than most leaders people admired, his wisdom shone through. Veterans especially rallied around Alex. They praised him for representing the best qualities of the military: loyalty, sacrifice, and integrity. Many said that Alex reminded them of why they joined the service in the first place, to protect and unite their country. Civilians also found inspiration in Alex's story. Parents told their children about him, saying, "See? You don't have to be loud or famous to make a difference. Just be kind, work hard, and believe in what you're doing." Teachers used Alex's example in classrooms to teach students about leadership and the power of positive influence. As the days went by, Trump continued to talk about Alex. He seemed genuinely moved by their conversation. In interviews, he spoke about how Alex had challenged him to think differently. "This kid isn't afraid to speak his mind," Trump said. "He reminded me that unity is strength. It's not about dividing people, it's about bringing them together." Trump's tone shifted slightly in his speeches and social media posts. He began emphasizing themes of teamwork and cooperation. Instead of focusing solely on bold moves and winning arguments, he started talking about finding common ground. Critics noticed the change and wondered if Alex had influenced him. Some people doubted whether Trump would stick to this new approach. They thought it might just be temporary. But others believed that Alex's words had planted a seed in Trump's mind, a seed that could grow into something meaningful over time. Regardless of what people thought, one thing was clear: Alex's message had reached a wide audience. Whether Trump acted on it fully or not, the conversation had already sparked discussions across the country. Despite all the attention, Alex remained humble. He didn't seek fame or recognition. Instead, he focused on using the platform he'd been given to promote causes he cared about. He gave interviews, wrote articles, and spoke at events about the importance of unity, teamwork, and supporting veterans. "I'm just a regular person doing my job," Alex often said. "The real heroes are the men and women I serve with every day. If my story inspires people to come together and support each other, then that's all I want." Alex's humility only made people admire him more. They saw him as someone who truly walked the walk, not just talked the talk. His actions matched his words, which made his message even stronger. The impact of Alex and Trump's meeting went far beyond the two of them. Across America, people began discussing the themes of their conversation. Schools used it as a teaching tool to help students understand leadership and communication. Community leaders referenced Alex's message in speeches about unity and teamwork. Even politicians cited his words as inspiration for bridging divides. For many, the meeting was a reminder that change often starts with small actions. One conversation between two very different people had sparked a nationwide discussion about how to bring people together. It showed that even in a world full, sometimes, the most powerful moments come from unlikely encounters. Think about it: two people who seem completely different can meet and change each other's lives in ways no one expects. That's exactly what happened between Donald Trump and Alex Carter. A billionaire businessman and a young Navy captain may seem like they live in totally different worlds. But when they sat down together at Mar-a-Lago, something amazing happened. Their shared humanity brought them together. In today's world, people are often divided. We argue about politics, religion, culture, and so many other things. It feels like we're always focusing on what makes us different instead of what brings us together. But the meeting between Trump and Alex showed us that even the most unlikely pair can find common ground. They talked about leadership, teamwork, and unity. They challenged each other's assumptions and learned from one another. And in doing so, they reminded us of something important: we all have more in common than we think. One of the biggest lessons from their conversation is the power of listening. Too often, we focus on speaking our minds without really hearing what others have to say. But Alex showed us that listening can open doors. When Trump listened to Alex, he saw things from a new perspective. He realized that boldness and unity aren't opposites, they can go hand in hand. And Alex, by listening carefully to Trump's questions, was able to share his thoughts in a way that truly resonated. Listening doesn't mean you have to agree with someone. It just means you're willing to understand where they're coming from. When we listen to each other, we start to see the humanity in everyone. We remember that, deep down, we all want the same things: safety, respect, and a better future for ourselves and our families. Another important lesson is about challenging assumptions. Before their meeting, Trump probably didn't expect much from Alex. He might have thought, "What can a young Navy captain teach me?" But as they talked, Trump realized that Alex had wisdom far beyond his years. Alex challenged Trump's ideas in a respectful but powerful way. He reminded him that unity isn't just a nice idea, it's a necessity. On the flip side, Alex might have been nervous about meeting someone as bold and outspoken as Trump. But instead of being intimidated, he stayed calm and confident. He spoke honestly and respectfully, showing Trump that he wasn't afraid to share his thoughts. By challenging each other's assumptions, they both grew as people. Their meeting also taught us the importance of bridging gaps. In a world where people are so divided, we need more conversations like this. Conversations that bring people together instead of tearing them apart. Imagine if more leaders, whether in politics, business, or communities, focused on finding common ground. Imagine if we all took the time to understand each other instead of judging based on appearances or stereotypes. Trump and Alex proved that bridging gaps isn't impossible. It starts with small steps like sitting down together, asking questions, and sharing stories. These small actions can lead to big changes. Their conversation sparked discussions across America, reminding people that unity is possible if we work for it. At the heart of their meeting was a reminder of our common goals. Whether you're a billionaire businessman or a young Navy captain, we all want the same things. We want to live in a world where people are treated fairly. We want to solve problems, not create new ones. And we want to leave the world better than we found it. Alex's message of unity touched Trump, and through him, it touched millions of others. It reminded us that we don't have to agree on everything to work together. We just need to focus on what matters most, helping each other and making progress. The story of Trump and Alex isn't just about them. It's about all of us. It shows that anyone can make a difference, no matter how young or unknown they are. Alex didn't set out to change the world, he just wanted to share his thoughts honestly. But because he spoke up, he inspired millions of people. That's the beauty of courage and wisdom. When you speak your truth, you never know who might hear it and be moved. You never know whose life you might change. Alex's story proves that even the smallest voices can spark big changes. So here's my final question to you: who in your life has surprised you with their wisdom or courage? Maybe it's a teacher who taught you something important. Or a friend who stood by you when times were tough. Or even a stranger who said something that stuck with you forever. Share their name in the comments below. Because every great story starts with someone believing in someone else. Let's take inspiration from Trump and Alex's meeting. Let's challenge ourselves to listen more, assume less, and bridge the gaps between us. Let's focus on what unites us instead of what divides us. And let's remember that even the smallest actions can lead to big changes. In the end, it's not about being famous or powerful. It's about being kind, brave, and true to yourself. If we all do that, we can create a world where everyone feels heard, respected, and valued. And isn't that the kind of world we all want to live in? One of the most inspiring parts of Alex's story is that he didn't try to be someone he wasn't. He didn't pretend to have all the answers or act like someone bigger than himself. Instead, he stayed true to who he was: a quiet, humble leader who cared deeply about his team and his mission. And because of that, his voice carried weight. This is an important lesson for all of us. You don't have to be loud or flashy to make an impact. Sometimes, the quietest voices are the ones that resonate the most. All you need is honesty, courage, and a willingness to speak up, even if it's just to one person. Think about the people in your own life. Who has inspired you with their quiet strength or steady determination? Maybe it's a parent who worked tirelessly to provide for your family. Or a sibling who always encouraged you to keep going, even when things got hard. These everyday heroes remind us that greatness isn't about fame or fortune, it's about making a positive difference in the lives of others. When Alex spoke to Trump, he probably didn't think his words would spread so far. He wasn't trying to start a movement or become a symbol of hope. He just wanted to share his thoughts honestly. But sometimes, that's all it takes to create a ripple effect. Imagine tossing a pebble into a still pond. The ripples spread outward, touching everything in their path. That's what happens when we speak our truth or take a stand for what we believe in. One small action can inspire others to do the same. And before you know it, those ripples turn into waves of change. Alex's story is proof of this. His conversation with Trump inspired veterans, civilians, teachers, and leaders across the country. It reminded people that unity is possible, even in a divided world. And it showed us that every voice matters, even the quietest ones. In a world that often feels chaotic and overwhelming, it's easy to lose hope. We see problems everywhere we look, and it's hard to imagine how one person can make a difference. But stories like Alex's remind us that hope can be found in the smallest moments. It doesn't take grand gestures or heroic acts to change the world. Sometimes, it's as simple as having a meaningful conversation. As simple as listening to someone else's perspective. As simple as choosing kindness over judgment. These small moments add up, creating a chain reaction of positivity and progress. So the next thing you feel discouraged, remember Alex's story. Remember that even the smallest actions can lead to big changes. And remember that you have the power to make a difference, no matter who you are or where you come from. If there's one thing we can learn from Trump and Alex's meeting, it's that unity starts with us. It's not something that happens overnight or because of one person's efforts. It's something we build together, day by day, moment by moment. We can start by looking for common ground in our daily lives. Whether it's at school, at work, or in our neighborhoods, we can choose to focus on what brings us together instead of what drives us apart. We can treat others with respect, even when we disagree with them. And we can speak up when we see injustice or division. When we do these things, we create a ripple effect of unity. We inspire others to do the same. And slowly but surely, we build a world where everyone feels valued and included. Finally, let's think about the kind of legacy we want to leave behind. What do we want people to remember about us? Do we want to be known for dividing people or bringing them together? For causing problems or solving them? For tearing others down or lifting them up? Alex's legacy will be one of courage, humility, and unity. He showed us that leadership isn't about titles or power, it's about serving others and working toward a better future. He reminded us that even the smallest voices can spark big changes. And he inspired millions of people to believe in themselves and each other. What kind of legacy do you want to leave? How can you use your voice, your actions, and your influence to make the world a better place? These are questions worth asking and answering. As we wrap up this story, I want to leave you with one last thought. Change starts with us. It starts with the choices we make every single day. It starts with the way we treat others and the way we view the world. And it starts with believing in the power of connection. So here's my final question again: who in your life has surprised you with their wisdom or courage? Share their name in the comments. Because every great story starts with someone believing in someone else. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I hope Alex and Trump's story inspires you to speak up, listen more, and focus on what unites us. Together, we can create a world where everyone feels heard, respected, and valued. And that's a goal worth fighting for.